Hey Baylor Multimedia, it's Mr. Camel coming to you with some stuff about how to combine text and images and shapes in Adobe Illustrator. So as we go further down the line, you'll be able to combine this with Photoshop images. Right now, we want to keep it simple and focus on a few basic skills, which include bringing in images and controlling the images, making some type, and then changing it to include some shapes, and making sure that we use color to match this up. Now, in terms of color, really want to think about how to use color so we emphasize the text. I wanted to make the text here, this graphical piece, the most important part of the picture. I want to focus on that and fade back the picture a little bit. So that's our primary objective. So we're going to work with any picture that you like. I'm going to show you how to work with this. I'm going to keep the text a little bit simpler than this. This is actually sort of a mildly complex procedure for a beginner to work with. I'll show you it. I'm going to show you a couple different ways of combining some text. So I'm just going to choose New Document first. And if I go to and choose New, and we want to choose Print for now, go ahead and run with Letter. And let's go with Landscape Orientation. So you want to go with Landscape Orientation so it's leaning sideways. So what you want to do next is find a picture. And I'm going to go and use the same picture I just did. And you want to make sure your Layers panel is visible because layers are so important in all these programs. And seeing what's in them, keeping track of them is really important. So I'm going to go ahead and choose File and Place. Now the secret here is also that you can actually just drag and drop it from yours. Now make sure when you search for your picture, what I did here is I searched for some reason today James Hetfield, mad guitar player from Metallica, and I realized he's getting older than he used to be, so that's kind of awkward for me. But anyways, I found this picture of James Hetfield. When I did my search, I made sure that I searched for, let's see, how did I find this? I went up to the top of my search, and I clicked on Tools, and if I turn off Tools, I got nothing. If I get the Tools, I get this. We want to use Text and find a large. Now, go ahead and find a large picture. This one's got lots of pixels, so a large picture is going to give us lots of nice detail to work with. And so when you open this, make sure that when you click it, and you go to something, and then you can kind of right-click on it, and make sure when you choose right-click and Save Image As, that you've got the JPEG with the actual name. If it says something like download or placeholder or something like that, it may not be the best thing. So you may not always get a picture that you have access to, so search and click until you find one that actually works. So notice when I drag and drop this in or use File Place to bring this into my picture that it's bigger than my workspace. So it looks like this, and my workspace is like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out, and you can do that with Control minus, or I can get the zoom tool, the magnifier, and kind of slide back and forth. I use the space bar to move it over. And I'm going to use the selection tool right here to shrink this down. Now, if I don't hold down Shift, it's going to get weirded out, and James is looking kind of weird. So I'm going to use Shift, hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to set it to somewhere in there the same size. So that works pretty good. And if I turn it off and turn it on, I can see where the shape is. And then I can double-click the hand tool to zoom back up. So I'm going to lock this layer. And I'm going to lock that layer to prevent me from moving that picture. Although I'm going to unlock it for a second and just quickly do a thing here, where if I select this and I change the opacity, it sort of desaturates the picture a little bit. So I'm going to come back and work with that more later. But right now I just want to desaturate or make it more opaque or more transparent and less saturated so that I can pay attention to my artwork. And we can finagle that a little bit more later. So let's talk here about text. With my text, I'm going to click the Type tool, and this time we're going to make a new layer for it. So new layer, and organizing my work by layers, and we might call this Type or Name or something, and I'm going to rename this one Image. So knowing what's in a layer is important because sometimes these layers get chock full of stuff. And we're going to get to the Type tool. We're going to click once on the Type layer. So click once, and I'm going to type James's name, James Hetfield. Hetfield. Let me spell it right. Here we go. You can also copy and paste it from the web if you want. Whatever, and it doesn't have to be James Hetfield. Do whatever you want. Do something interesting. Do a person's picture though. And I'm just bring this up. Now this text is not going to appear very strongly on this because it's really small type. We want to use more decorative fonts. So if I go up here to, let's see. Oh, something I didn't tell you. The control panel, the control bar. The control bar has a bunch of stuff in it that displays different things depending on what you've selected. So if I click the text, I see text options. If I click the picture, I get picture options. If I click something else, I'll have options for those things. So let's get the text, and I can choose Myriad Pro here, or whatever the type is that was default. And I want to choose a nice heavy-duty font. So by heavy-duty, I mean it's bold, it's thick, it's big, and the font is wide. You don't want to have any small pieces in it. So like this Broadway font, which one? Broadway looks nice, but has some really skinny pieces in it that are going to disappear with the technique we're using. So we want to use something big and bold and thick in terms of the graphics. So try to avoid things that have small pieces like this one. Again, this one's got some small skinny parts to it, and I don't want to use that one. I want to use something nice and bold. I like Impact a lot. It's pretty generic in some ways, and it's kind of unremarkable, but it gets the job done. So you can try Impact. There it is, Impact. Impact's a nice font. And with Impact, there are no additional bolds or blacks or italics. It's just basic. So choose something that's already set up to go with a nice thick appearance. I'm going to drag this to make it bigger. And with point and type, when I clicked and typed, I should be able to squish and squash and do all kinds of cool stuff with this. So I got that. Now we are going to change this into something else in a minute. But right now it's type, and we can edit it, we can stretch it, squash it, do whatever we want. But we can still edit the text. Like if I decide this is not James Hetfield, this is Lars Ulrich, which is hilarious because he's the drummer, right? And I think he's from Norway. So no, it's not Lars Ulrich, it's James Hetfield. You got that wrong. Get the right name. So it's still editable text. We can still change the text. So I'm going to spell this right again. All right, there we go. So the text is still editable and can be changed, but we're going to do something to make it not editable, and it will not be text anymore. So to keep it simple, I'm going to draw a couple of shapes on this, and I'm going to sandwich his name up like this. And I can use the selection tool and Alt and Shift and drag that shape down. And the combination of those keys can be a little bit dicey sometimes. You have to I think you have to push Alt first and then Shift as you're dragging it down. So I've got these three selected. I'm going to go ahead and let me close this down so you know where to find it. Gosh, I'd like to close this whole setup. What I'm looking for, let me change my workspace back. So if your workspace is getting to be a mess, you can reset. And now I've got back to my layers, my properties. And I do always like to use my control panel, which is at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my align panel. Now the align panel shows up with his two best friends, Pathfinder and Transform. Here he is. And so I'm going to use this align panel, and I've got to set my align to the right thing. So if we've got three things selected, I'm going to go up here and say align to selection, not align to artboard. So I can then click this, and it aligns those pieces up to each other. You can also click distribute, which means let's evenly arrange these. Now that didn't work out very good for me, so I'm going to undo that. So undo is Control Z, and what I'm going to eventually do is combine those into one unified piece. So what we'll do with this is, and we want to maybe tweak this a little bit, is we're going to take the name, and we're going to use a command that is type, and then we're going to choose create outlines. So create outlines changes this into no longer editable type. It's now text. So to prove that, we can choose the direct selection tool and choose one of the points on this letter to mess with it. So I want you to take one of your letters and change it up a little bit. And to get better at this, I'm going to zoom in on it. And I'm going to work with that direct selection tool to adjust this letter a little bit. So I can change the position of the points. You can also change the curves. So if I set this one and make it more curvy, I can then grab that handle, just to let you see that a little bit better. Let's zoom in. I can grab that handle and I can adjust that curve. So all these shapes and curves are editable. And if you find one that's a corner like this one, you can change it to a curve by clicking on this button up here. All right, so we'll review that some more as we go forward, but that's some of the basic skills in editing shapes, because this is now a shape. It's no longer text. It's a shape. So I've got this piece, and I think what I might do, just for fun, is make this shape stand out. Now, to change all this up, well, let's keep it simple and not do that. So, sorry. Let's leave it like this. So I'm going to select all these pieces, and in my Align panel that shows up with two best friends, Transform and Pathfinder, Pathfinder has one called Unite. So now I can take this and choose Unite, so it's all one combined piece now. So that's all one item. In Layers, it's going to show it as a group. And I want that to show up as a unified piece, so somehow it made it grouped. So I think that something didn't happen. So these should combine. And I think I may have to change that into a compound path. And then unified, I think. There we go. It's still grouped. But we've got the whole thing set together. And you want to combine text and shapes with this. And we also want to make this stand out a bit more. It's still sort of unremarkable. So what I want to do is I want to grab some color from the image, like the guitar, not the red. The red will be too hot. So if I, for example, let's try this, and I choose the red-ish from the background. That's kind of a interesting red. It's kind of burgundy colored a little bit. So if I do that and try to match the background, I'm going to lose my well, nothing happened, did it? You have to have your object selected in order to get that color applied to it. So I'm going to try to get sort of a burgundy color there to match that background. You can see that that just blends in too much and doesn't really emphasize the text. So we want to use something either opposite this, which is like green, which is, I think, not a good idea. So if I change back to this and I use green, it works, but it looks kind of horrible, and green I feel like is the color that expresses the mood that I want for this piece. So instead I'm going to go with orange, and I see orange on his guitar, the orange colors there, and I'm going to try to go with that and try to use that as sort of a setup, and it's a little more yellow, I guess. It's kind of orangish. Classic Les Paul guitar coloring there. Let's pull this down a bit more. I don't know. I want more emphasis. So when you want more emphasis, you want to use more saturation. So bring your saturation up. I always set my color to H, so I can choose hue, saturation, and brightness. And that way I can bring all my color up in here. So I slide my slider up and down to get the color range or the hue. And then I can slide left or right to get saturation. More saturation is brighter. Less saturation is close to gray and is less emphasized. So I'm going to go brighter and more saturated. And that looks okay-ish, I guess. But I want to add more emphasis. So to get more emphasis, I'm going to add a stroke to the outside. So when I click on the stroke here, I can choose the color here. I can choose the color down here if I want to. So if I open that up, it opens up my color picker, and I can choose whatever color it is I want to use. And then you can, of course, use the stroke setter up here in the control panel. Again, control is here. And you can use the properties panel for the same thing. So there's different ways of operating here that help us choose our best version of how we want to do this. So that looks okay. I did want to combine the text and the shapes here. So let me open up the group, which was kind of almost a mistake. So let me open this up, double click. So when you double click on something, it brings you into deeper into the group or the object a little bit more. So I want to take this and ungroup it again. Ungroup, I guess. No. Kind of want to take this piece and I just want to move that down. So I can actually just take the points and bring them down. It's because the letters did not combine the way I wanted them to. So just for design's sake, I'm going to combine this a bit more. And I want those shapes to combine. So if I select all these shapes at once, and I'm kind of experimenting here, and if I use Pathfinder, and Unite, I'm trying to eliminate the breaks between the letters and the text. So having gone into compound path a little bit more, I can go up here to this shape here and go out of that. So now I've got this thing laid out properly. Looks okay. Some of my letters are combined and some are not. So I can always work with it a bit more. So I'm trying to get everything combined into one piece. So I'm selecting specific pieces. Sometimes the Pathfinder wants to work with specific parts of the image. So do something like this. Now, when you're ready to turn it in, let's work with the image a bit more just to balance things a bit. I'm going to lock my text layer, unlock my image layer. Let's take the image layer and let's change the opacity a bit just to give us a good look. If it's all the way up, that looks pretty good actually. But if we dial it back a bit more, we can emphasize the text. All right, good times. So we're now going to save this. Hopefully we've already saved it, save as. So you do file save as, and saving is always going to be to a Adobe Illustrator document. So I'm going to name this head field, and then I'll put my ID number on there. So mine is, there we go, and save. So now I've got the image. It wants to save, and it wants to answer me a question, how to save this. And I'm like, yeah, that's all good. So it's saved. And the next thing I'm going to do is make this available to turn into my assignment. So I'm going to choose File. I'm going to use Export. And for now, we're going to go with Save for Web. Now, what this allows us to do is choose and compare different file formats and see how they work. So let's go ahead and pick PNG 24 as a preset. Really good image format. We've got good resolution here, and I'm going to choose to uncheck transparency. Now, you'll see this when you check or uncheck transparency, you're going to see or not see that checkerboard back there. You will not actually see the checkerboard when you're done. That just means that that's the area that's going to be transparent. That's useful later on. Right now, we want to stick to no transparency for turning things in. So when you save it, it wants to know where to save it to. I'm going to put this in my downloads, not where you should put yours. So I've got that there, and I'm going to go ahead and turn that into my Google Drive. Now, the next thing we want to be able to do is drop this into our Drive folders, and we're in a new grading period, so we're going to go to GP2 now. We're done with GP1. Keep the stuff in there as evidence of the awesome work that you've done, but now I'm going to take my image that I just did, and there's two versions that I'm going to use. One is to back up and save, and one is, now I've got mine in downloads, where you should have yours. So I'm going to take all three of these pictures and drop them in here. And that includes my PNG that I just exported, it includes the AI, and it includes the JPEG original, just so I can keep all those things together. Now, once you're going to go turn those in, you can use that to, when you're turning it in a classroom, you can use add, and then you'll add by going to Google Drive to select. And the same thing is possible in Bulb. So when you do this in Bulb, you can actually just grab a new picture. Let me make a new page just to show how this works. So if I add an image, I can then do Google Drive and drop the picture right in there. So I've got several accounts going here. Here's my folder where it is. It's in GP2. And I want to get the PNG one, which has the text and the image combined. It's showing up sometime soon. There it is. So then be thoughtful about how you do this. You can actually shrink this down if you want to. Not too small, but go ahead and make it a little bit smaller. Now it's got room for caption here. What I want you to do is not use the caption for the most of your writing. I want you to write down here. So in this case, I added text and write about what you did. Okay, changed it to outlines. Then used so write what you did. Explain the procedure. Talk about how you used the image and the opacity. How did you make it stand out? About your decisions, why you chose the colors you chose, how it all works together to make one awesome image. That's the tutorial for today. Take your time with this and be expressive and have fun. Don't forget to put this in a Bulb portfolio as well as turn it into the assignment. Rock on, yo.